And they won't know until the shelves run empty and the prices spike. Some people who are buying off Timo or Shein or whatever, you know, they're mad at the price hikes now, but they still haven't seen what it looks like when stuff at their local stores either isn't there or is much more expensive. And then there are two paths that these voters can go down, right? They can get mad at Trump, which a lot of them will, and his approval rating will go down again. Or for the true believers, they're going to really lean into that MAGA Maoism thing, the aesthetic cult, where the virtue signal is not needing anything at all. Under Biden, the fact that anything went up in price was traitorous. He should be, you know, Biden should have been tried at Nuremberg for the inflation crisis, you know? But under Trump, now it's like, well, you don't need 30 toys, you need 3. You don't need all this cheap Chinese crap, you know, you only need a few things. And the true believers will fall in line with that. They'll say, well, no, actually, the most patriotic thing that you can do is to be poor and suffer. You're the one who's attached to all of these material possessions. You're the traitor. You're the one who's bought in on it. It's called MAGA communism. It's Maoism. Like, you joke, but unironically, there are a lot of ideological overlaps between what the MAGA camp is doing here and a lot of the stuff that, like, well, I can't say Mao promoted, but that Maoists talk about. How do I hedge my retirement against everything? I don't know, buy gold. It is pretty funny. So like we basically, like, rhetorically, our position is shifting, right? Because it used to be we had to argue against people who were pretending to be upset about Biden's economy, even though Biden's economy, at least in a relative sense, was doing fine. But now we're going to have to argue with people who think that it's virtuous and patriotic to consume less. You're going to be hearing like a bunch of disingenuous climate change arguments. Oh, don't you think it's good that people consume less? So much for caring about the environment. Lefties yesterday, we need to consume less goods so the environment is fine. Lefties today, oh no, give me my sweet treats from China. Ah! And like these arguments are being made by Nazis who don't care which side of the fence they're on. They just hate you. They don't believe any of their positions. He has been going on about the dolls quite a bit lately. He's a lot like the average transgender on Twitter. Give me the quote.
To President Xi of China. Somebody said, oh, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls, you know? And maybe the 2 dolls will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way.
Of course, the reason why they're saying dolls is because, yeah, exactly, they want to equate worrying about the economy with something childish. They want to equate worrying about inflation and price hikes and poor trade deals to be emotionally equated to something that's childish, feminine, trivial. That's the reason why. Dolls? Really? That's the thing you think of when you talk about, like, you know, millions of tons of cargo not making it to the United States? Just dolls? It's everything, man. Everything. It's avocado toast all over again? Yeah, to an extent. And it's the extent that you're, like, minimizing the severity of an economic issue by trivializing it. You know, you're essentially doing, like, a fallacy, right? A reducto ad absurdum at the concept of being concerned about these prices. Yeah, he was talking about that. Pencils, strollers, always in the context of, at the very least, like, you know, children, right? Pencils. Who writes with pencils? Well, usually kids in school, right? Strollers are for babies. Dolls are for little girls. You get me. What they're playing with, right? He doesn't know what Fortnite is. He might know what Fortnite is. He might know. He might know. I'm not sure. What's a stroller, though? I guess, is a stroller like the technical term, or is that just like a euphemism or a common term that we use in America? Do they have a different word for that in other countries? A stroller is like a little carriage you push a child in. Oh, pram is what the Brits call it, right? They call it a pram. Baby carriage? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I was about to say, what do you mean you don't know what a stroller is? But then it occurred to me, stroller sounds like a slang term, doesn't it? Right? Like, oh, you're going on a stroll. You're pushing, you get what I mean? It seems like the kind of thing where it's like, well, that's not like its proper term. I don't really know. Push chair. Yeah, I don't know. MAGA Maoism. MAGA Maoism. Actually, most Brits call it a buggy. Pram is kind of posh. Really? I didn't know that. That's interesting. Anyway, I'm not joking about any of this. I've already seen big conservative accounts arguing about the moral virtue of consuming less. For one, again, obviously, I don't believe this. The funny thing is that I feel kind of weird even talking about it because I've been talking about the virtue of buying more expensive things less often for a while in the context of clothing, right? Like you buy like a high quality t-shirt with a nice like reinforced rib neck collar or something, and you can wear that basically forever. It gets stained, throw in some oxygen bleach, throw in some enzymatic cleaner, dump some powder in the bin, whatever. Wear it for the next 10 years. How is this a controversial thing? Isn't that just common sense? This is a difficult thing to talk about because a lot of people are suffering, but it's important to understand that for the average person, you are wealthier and can consume more things than previous generations. I know it doesn't feel that way. You feel like in the 2000s, the 90s, whatever, people had more opportunities. And they certainly did with regard to their future. There are specific costs that have skyrocketed. Healthcare, education, rent, buying a house is out of the possibility of, for most people. But in terms of day-to-day expenses, people spend, on average, a smaller percentage of their paycheck on groceries than they used to. People have more things than they used to. It's easier than ever to get a computer, phone, whatever. The problem is that what amount of stuff we consider acceptable to have as a baseline for a dignified existence changes over time. And there's nothing wrong with that. 100 years ago, what a baseline level of personal possessions was very, very different to what it is today. No one would consider themselves poor back then for not having access to the kinds of consumer goods we have access to today. Not just because they didn't exist. Even if they did exist back then, it just wasn't expected. But expectations mean a lot in terms of defining what a person needs to consider themselves happy. It's kind of like a hedonic treadmill problem, but on like a broader social level, There are some things that become genuine necessities, like phones. Smartphones are pretty much a necessity, You just, to interact with the modern world, it's really, really, really important, But in a lot of cases, they are just luxury goods that we've gotten used to. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that people should live in luxury to the extent that it's possible, But I do also think that sometimes the decision to spend frugally feels like a more radical choice than it might have in the past. I think that if we went back 50, 60, 70 years before the modern credit economy, it would have been a lot more common for people to say, I can't do that, I don't have the money. But nowadays, a lot of people feel socially pressured to spend their money very frivolously because it's possible to, because it's easy to borrow money in the form of credit cards, because it's easy to get it, and there's a million like buy now, pay later schemes, Klarna bullshit. The whole socioeconomic superstructure is designed to extract as much from you as possible and make you a debt slave. So even though we have access to more luxury goods, I would say that the system is much more exploitative than it used to be. In an environment like this, choosing to buy less can be, I wouldn't say a radical decision, but definitely a subversive one. If you're moderate with how you spend, how you use your money. The problem, of course, is that these MAGA Maoist types don't actually believe in any of this crap. They just want to defend Trump no matter what. A good way of demonstrating this is that they will talk about the moral virtue of consuming less, but if Trump actually did manage to turn the economy around and all of a sudden consumer goods were widely available, they would say, thank God, Trump made all this crap cheap. Let's go. He fixed the economy. Heil Trump. And then all of the talk about less consumerism, about not buying stuff from China, about it's virtuous to consume less, all out the window. They don't believe in anything